So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord, and Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. So you have first the bringing forth from Adam through Eve. There's the bearing of Cain, and Cain is a tiller of the ground. Tilling the ground brings forth a tiller of the ground. Right? Yeah. Adam is cursed to till the ground. This consciousness brings forth its own likeness, a tiller of the ground. And what do we see? Something very beautiful, that already there is something higher coming in. You know that Cain is symbolizing the first degree. He's the same stuff, seems to be made up of the same stuff, being a tiller of the ground. They both brought their offerings. I'm just kind of hesitating here because I'm thinking about your illustrated material, because at this point it probably says Cain and Abel and the offspring of Cain and Abel, does it not? Yes. This is a mistake. Actually, it's also wrong in the study aid from which it was taken. Yeah, I have to be a woman here now and not be Adam. Blame it on somebody else. But we take the credit or the blame for having copied a mistake. Because it should say, we know that, for instance, this is wrong because Abel had no offspring. Yeah. And so what it is Cain and Abel and the offering of Cain and Abel. Yeah, doesn't that make more sense? Yeah. So what I was trying to say before that is that the first thing that comes forth is the first degree. But then we see that Eve bears again, and she brings forth something a little higher, doesn't she? It brings forth Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep. This is a sense really of the second degree. If you know those, the Christ translation, the second translation of immortal mind there, that the second degree is what we find with Abel. And his offering was higher than the offering of Cain. And yet we're going to see that Abel cannot stand in the face of Cain. But it's a learning process, isn't it? This is something we all learn, and it takes most of our life to learn it. That the second degree is not sufficient in the face of the first degree. That the second degree is killed by the first degree. This is what we will find. Mrs. Eddy says that when Eve says, "I have gotten a man from the Lord," that this is a murderer from the beginning. This is setting up the whole parameters for the first degree, and that this will have to be dealt with, and it will raise a whole new complexity of the mortal problem, but an absolutely necessary part of the mortal condition, the human problem, is to learn this lesson. Can I deal with the first degree on the basis of the second degree alone? My morality, my human goodness, that I'm good and I'm going to be good, and I will take the standpoint of good, and I will not speak evil, and I will not do evil. I will not be evil. I will only be good, and I will carry the banner through every experience. The banner of good through every experience. And it's whack, whack, whack every time. Because it should be whack, whack, whack. Because the second degree cannot stand on its own. This is the second degree when we don't leave it in the context of the Christ translation. Then the second degree gets whipped, gets beat, because it should. This is success, that the second degree will go out. Must go out because we are being driven to the third degree. We are being driven to taking God's standpoint of getting a man from the Lord, of getting man, finding man in God, finding God's man, the Christ man, the consciousness that the sixth day gives us, the true man. This is the true man from the Lord, and it's the third degree man. And that's what we'll see very shortly, that happens in the story. But first, there's the having to learn that lesson. So we go through all those experiences, and they're successes. They're wonderful that we learn that lesson. That a moralistic, humanistic sense of Christianity doesn't cut it, doesn't make it. Yeah. She says there's only one standard, the standard of truth, which cannot produce its opposite. Man possesses only that which is derived from God. Truth and error do not commingle in creation. So Abel was a keeper of the sheep. He was to some extent watching his thinking, and gives us a little touch of what the true morality is, what the true second degree is, the moment we come out from God, the moment we get a man from the God of the first record of creation, take our sense of man from the translation of the Christ, then this raises up. You see, to look at the sixth day of creation is to look at the true man. This raises up something within us, within the human. It raises up a higher sense of man, a higher understanding of man. It raises up first, out of depravity, a true moral standpoint. Then you get the transitional qualities, those beautiful qualities that are able to stand, that do come through. Those second degree qualities come through because they are based in the spiritual, on the spiritual. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And they lead us somewhere. They lead us to a higher sense of man, spiritual man, the third degree man. Listen to what Mrs. Eddy says here. She says, error is assuming a divine character. it teaches mortals never to believe a lie. Isn't that terrific? Apparently error is not error. That's really truth that teaches that. It's truth that teaches never to believe a lie. But the depiction of what would be the false hypothesis of man teaches us, the second record teaches us not to believe a lie at this point. Okay. So we come to truth as truth. In the compound idea man, every idea reflects every other idea. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. This is a depiction of the compound idea. This is how the Hebrew writers would depict the compoundness now of this consciousness as a hierarchy or a holarchy, if we want to say, a holarchy of man and then beast and then herb and tree and grass and so forth, that everything is having its place value in the compound idea man. Nothing is inimical there. Nothing has to be put out or shut out. Nothing is being used. The higher does not use the lower, does not make use of. How can I use? How can I, what is it? That's that term. It's not coming to me, but it's the tonality here. To take advantage of, you see. Exploit, thank you. There's no exploitation here because one is higher than the other, or that there's a greater idea and a lesser idea. But she says it's a brotherhood. It's a consciousness of brotherhood, where everything is assisting everything else. Everything is working with everything else. And so she says God gives the lesser idea of himself for a link to the greater. The higher always protects the lower. It doesn't exploit the lower. In the world we see what? In the second record we see exploitation, using. How can I use this one, this situation, these circumstances for my gain? Yes. And here is that great sense of harmony, harmony from the standpoint of truth, being a holarchy of the higher protecting the lower, the rich in spirit helping the poor, the supplying of the brother's need, seeking one's own in another's good. You see, not seeking my own and my own good and using everybody else's good for my good, but seeking one's own and finding one's own good in everyone else's good, in the good of all else. So the least spiritual idea, she says, has might, immortality, goodness. All the varied expressions of God reflect health, holiness, immortality, infinite life, truth, and love. And then we come to the second record and we see what that's handling, what this brotherhood, assistance in brotherhood, this consciousness, holarchical consciousness, deals with and uncovers. It uncovers Cain. It uncovers the first degree, which is just what we said, the attempt to exploit and use and annihilate, yes, to wipe out. First use someone and then wipe them out. And that this is to your benefit. And the Lord God Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering, so that there's still that sense of the Lord God Jehovah being a higher concept of God that's being raised up within ourselves and begins to recognize that the second degree is higher, is better, is holier than the first degree. But unto Cain, to the first degree, and to his offering, he had no respect. Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. So you have the first degree wiping out the second. And the Lord God Jehovah said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? Where is now this second degree? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? See the very opposite. It's in the textbook, Mrs. Eddy has the marginal heading, brotherhood repudiated. Not assistance in brotherhood. Am I my brother's keeper? A sense of being an isolated, working on one's own, making one's own way through the world, and the best one can by using everything else. And he, the Lord God Jehovah, said, the voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground, and now art thou cursed from the earth. And so Mrs. Eddy says, murder brings its curse, the belief of life in matter, sins at every step, incurs divine displeasure, would be rid of troublesome truth, would slay the spiritual idea whenever and wherever it appears. But error cannot forever be concealed. It's revealing itself, isn't it? Shows itself forth as what it is. And truth then, through her eternal laws, unveils error. What a difference to compare the Cain and Abel, and then to see by that comparison so clearly what error is. So truth unveils error through her eternal laws. Truth causes sin to betray itself. It can't help but to show itself forth as what it is. Truth sets upon error the mark of the beast. So there is an identification of that first degree, and we see what error is. It just becomes more and more blatant, more and more rampant, more and more clear. Isn't that true? Huh? It just shows itself more and more what it is in all of its complexity, and it cannot hide in its complexity. It can't hide anymore at this point. It's where it's so obvious, and it knows that you know it. And it says, so what? Am I my brother's keeper? What was that?
The jig is up.
The jig is up. But it still thinks that it has life to continue on. So we come to, let's take the epitome for that. Erroneous consciousness. I wonder if we took life's epitome, truth as life, which was mortal consciousness creating mortal manhood, mankind. And now truth as truth, erroneous consciousness disrupts the brotherhood and brings condemnation. So Cain has been condemned, and now we come to truth as love in the first record. And God saw everything that he had made, And behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. And the epitome is that in God's infinite self-containment, perfect womanhood embraces the compound idea in all its perfection. You have that tone of love, the subtone of love coming in. God seeing everything that he had made, really seeing the creation of his own self-consciousness, his own divine self-consciousness of what I am, looking at what I am, unfolding to myself, within myself, as myself, what I am. And this is good, and I hold this within myself. I contain this within myself. This is coming in the subtone of truth as love, and will be carried over into the tone of love, the seventh day. It's the perfection of creation here, that in God's infinite self-containment, as we said, perfect womanhood, the standpoint of love, embraces the compound idea. The textbook says the divine principle comprehends and expresses all. This sense of comprehending is to contain, to embrace, to include, and that all is as perfect as the divine principle is perfect. Now there's nothing new in spirit. As you hear the science tone, you hear how we come to the point of completeness, perfection, everything being contained, there being no new creation. Nothing is new to spirit. In spirit, she says, nothing can be novel to eternal mind, as though to say, actually, it's always been. What you see as creation is that which has always been. Mind knows from all eternity his own idea. And you hear science, the word of science. Deity was satisfied with his work. And she says, how could he be otherwise, since that spiritual creation was the outgrowth, the emanation. Now everything that we have looked at is the outgrowth, the emanation of what? His infinite self-containment and immortal wisdom. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? What a sense of love, truth as love. Yeah, it is a loop. And the second record then is not the perfect womanhood of truth as love, the highest sense, you see, of manhood being womanhood. But it says, and the Lord God Jehovah said unto Cain, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance, you would think, now whosoever slays Cain, only good, well and good. Get that guy, wipe that guy out, huh? That first degree, go get him. But the Lord God Jehovah now is our sense of God has evolved and evolved and evolved, because this God has a love touch in it. It says, whatever you do, don't slay Cain. Don't touch Cain. Because whoever slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him, not just once, but sevenfold. Yeah. And this is the fourth flash of light. This is the fourth great flash of light. To let error alone to destroy itself. Leave it in the system. That's the letting it alone, isn't it? Leave it in the system. Don't you try to come in, what is that? It says in one point, to leave it in God's hands, leave it in the system, and the system takes care of it. It goes out. The first degree goes out, we know that. It goes out under the workings of the Christ translation, the workings of the first record of creation on the second record of creation, brings about the disappearance of evil, which we call the annihilation, or we could say that there's a spiritualization process going on, and in that spiritualization process, Cain will dissolve within your consciousness. Cain will disappear. It just will disappear. You don't have to beat it to death. You don't have to hunt it down and find it and display it and disclose it. It's in the system that a mistake is corrected by the system, by love's system. The workings of love's homeo, resa, and stasis. Take care of it. Don't touch it. That's the fourth great insight that comes in. They that take the sword shall perish with the sword. The moment you touch Cain, you become Cain or a Cain-like. She says it is error even to murmur or to be angry over sin. That's taking it to the nth degree, isn't it? That you don't kill error at all when you take the sword. You can only deal with error by knowing its nothingness, by knowing the inevitable nothingness of a mistake. What did we start with? We said love is error-friendly. The system has error-friendliness in it. Love says, it's okay, I'm taking care of it. It's all in the workings. It's all in my workings, all being worked out. Working it out, I am through the equipollence of God. So let truth uncover and destroy error in God's own way, and let human justice pattern the divine. So that is truth. So we come to love. Did we recap the final subtone of truth? Imperfect consciousness, you see, receives the penalty of self-destruction. Now we come to love, to that seventh day of creation. And just a moment. The epitome, the overall epitome for our two tones is that love is fulfilled in its creation. You see that truth as love is the perfection, has to do with the perfection of creation, and now love has to do with being fulfilled in the perfection of its creation. We have two tones, truth and love. Why is this? This is love's shorthand. That love is always that which is all-encompassing, all-embracing, which holds the whole of creation within itself. If love holds the whole of creation, it holds truth within itself. And so love begins with the whole of creation by starting with truth. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, it says. And our epitome for that is that the motherhood of love includes the universal perfection of being. Word is science. The motherhood of love includes measureless infinity. Word is science, huh? You hear it. She has the marginal heading, infinity measureless. This is now the content of love, what is held by love. Love looking at its own infinite self-containment as mind, spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, and love as the truth, as its own ideal, love's own ideal of itself. This is the mother and the motherhood of love. Infinity, measureless. The textbook says the ideas of God in universal being are complete. They are forever expressed. You hear science? The science tone. Why? Because science reveals infinity and the fatherhood and motherhood of love. How shall we declare him? I love that. Because what have we been looking at? The self-declaration of God, huh? God declaring himself. That's the word. Now when we come to love, to the conclusion of the matter, to the perfection of the matter, we see that in proportion as that is reflected within us as our consciousness, as we realize that there's perfect reflection of Creator and creation, we declare him. The creation declares God, right? Not God declaring creation, now the creation declares God. And how does that take place? She says, and she actually gives the 3 degrees. She says, mortals can never know the infinite. 1st degree. Oh, look at that. Mortals can never know the infinite until, do you hear it? Until, which means, I guess they can, under certain conditions, huh? Until they throw off the old man. 2nd record. Right? And they reach the spiritual image and likeness. Yeah, isn't that gorgeous? 2nd degree, human capacity is slow to discern and to grasp God's creation and the divine power that go with it and the presence that goes with it. And so she goes on, as though to indicate, but it's possible. Mortals as such can't know it until they are worked on, or only in the degree that they are worked on by this system of love, love's system of equipollence, and throw off the old man. So you get a touch of the 2nd degree, and that the old man will be thrown off in spite of the mortal, in spite of the 1st degree, in spite of your human capacity, any limitations in the 2nd degree, that you will come into the 3rd degree. So she shows what cannot fathom infinity and what can fathom infinity, and shows that the 3rd degree is inevitable, that we will all come to the knowledge of the Son of God unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. That's the 6th day in its perfection, fulfilled, seen as love's fulfillment. Love will fulfill that, fulfills that in each one of us. And in the 2nd record, So the first shows us the motherhood of love, including the universal perfection of being, measureless infinity. Now we will see in this final tone that finally mortal manhood is shut out from the presence of God. And as truth, that mortality reaches its climax by falling into complete oblivion. And it's a very simple statement. What is it? And Cain went out of the presence of the Lord. Doesn't that follow beautifully from what we see from the first record? How man is lifted into the state of the third degree. How man is formed into the perfection of declaring God, of being God's own declaration of himself. Man really coincident with, man one with God. Love and love's idea one. Isn't that love? Isn't that essentially love? Love never being deprived of loveliness. Love cannot be deprived of its manifestation or object. This is the oneness, and over and against that is the second record, which is really saying the same thing in a different way, and Cain went out of the presence of the Lord. So there was a complete separation of that first degree from the new and true sense of what God is, as that is emerging and growing within the human consciousness. So you hear that equipollence. A misconception, the textbook says, it has no truth to support it and falls back upon itself. Error, having reached its climax in suffering, yields to truth, returns to dust, but it is only the mortal sense who dies. The image of spirit cannot be effaced, since it is the idea of truth, and changes not, but becomes more beautifully apparent at error's demise. So we come to love as love. Infinite love operates as holiness, as the divine infinite calculus of ideas. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. It's that dynamic rest, isn't it? Resting in action, resting in holy work. Don't you hear the calculus? The holy work of the calculus from the standpoint of love is that resting in action, the calculus never coming to an end, never stopping, always bringing out the allness of God and the nothingness of anything else, always bringing out the equipollence of God for us, to us. So God rests in action, imparting, has not impoverished the divine mind. No exhaustion follows the action of this mind. It's the highest and sweetest rest, holy work. And so she depicts love and man as coexistent at this point. The oneness of love and love's idea. Unfathomable mind is expressed. The depth, breadth, height, might, majesty, and glory of love fill all space. Human language can only repeat an infinitesimal part of what exists. Mortals cannot comprehend the absolute ideal man. They cannot comprehend man's principle, love. The days of creation cannot be reckoned according to the calendar of time. These days they will appear as mortality disappears. They will reveal eternity, newness of life, in which all sense of error forever disappears, and thought accepts the divine infinite calculus. That is very beautiful. And in the second record, we find the equipollence of it. And the epitome for love as love in the second record, as mortality has no place in God's ever-presence, it is not. And Cain dwelt in the land of Nod. It's a bringing back. You see, Cain went out. The mark was set upon him. He dwelt in the land of Nod. He stayed in his own dream. It's a sense of that dream land. In divine science, material man is shut out from the presence of God. The five corporeal senses cannot take cognizance of spirit. They cannot come into his presence. They must dwell in dreamland. And I think if we lifted that to love's view, we would say that that love includes that situation as nothing. Included in love, the going out of the presence of the Lord is love including that error as nothing. We say love is all inclusive. What does it do with error? It includes error as nothing, shows it to be nothing, and there it dwells. That is its place value, as nothing. That's a story. Actually, John Dorley takes the story to the end of the first 1,000-year period, and that's a beautiful thing to see, because what happens is that Adam and Eve, in a way, if you follow the text, to encapsulate that development, Adam and Eve evaluate their situation. They see that what they have done doesn't work. And so they say, let us revise our input, let's try again. So they try again. The creative nature is revised. Their creative sense is revised at the point of the word. And what is brought forth is something new, something different. What comes forth is the first touch of the third degree. It's Seth. So that on a completely new basis, with a new cycle, Seth is born. You get the feeding back, the feedback of science. If you want to embrace this in the word as science sense, that you have that sense of science coming in. And then you see too that the Seth has a line, his line. Cain has a line, and his line goes to Lamech. If you think of Cain's line, it goes to Lamech, and Lamech is also a murderer. And then you see that to Lamech there shall be vengeance 70 and 7 times. It just shows you what comes out of a line that keeps reproducing its own kind and reproducing its own nothingness, really, versus the spiritual line of Seth. And that spiritual line of Seth really takes us up, let's see, yes, all the way up to Enoch. That we have 7 generations from Adam through Seth, then all the way up to Enoch. Enoch is the 7th generation, and you know that Enoch is that one that walked with God. It says, and God took him. He was translated. And when you read in Hebrews, you get a wonderful climax to the whole thing, a capping of the whole thing, that by faith Enoch was translated, that he should not see death. He really solved the mortal problem, huh? And he was not found because God translated him. What have we been talking about, huh? What is love's climax? What is love's perfection and answer? That the mortal sense is retranslated, that we are translated. For before his translation, he hath had witness borne to him that he had been well-pleasing unto God. So he walked with God, they say. Go. Walk.